Hi, Honest Discussioner here. First off, a big thank you to Tool Time for the shout out and recommendation, as well as a big welcome to all of my new subscribers that are coming over from his channel. I appreciate the mention, Tool Time, so again, thank you very much. Now, I'm the kind of person who can continue to talk about a single topic for a long time, but I realize that most of my subscribers might get bored with the topic of free will a little bit quicker than I would. So while I'm sure this isn't the last video on free will that I'm going to be doing, there's going to be plenty of other things that I'm going to be discussing in the near future, so don't expect this to be the free will only channel. But for now, I am going to be responding to Migkiller's response to my argument that tries to reconcile free will, determinism, with morality and rationality. Now, before we begin, there's been a lot of terms floating around lately, and I want to clarify for the viewers the different theories on ethics and morality. To my knowledge, there are only three major theories that seek to define morality. There is virtue ethics, deontological, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, deontological ethics, and consequentialism. So if someone were to steal some bread, let's say, the virtue perspective would look at the intentions of stealing the bread of the individual and see what that said about the person's character. If they were stealing to feed their hungry family, then it would be moral. But if it was to take something selfishly, then it would not be. In deontological ethics, it would always be wrong because the action of stealing is wrong, regardless of the context. Then there's consequentialism, which would have to look at the overall consequences, hence the word, of the action. If the bread saved the family's life, then it was morally acceptable to steal it. But if they would have been fed anyway and the baker of the bread lost money, then it would be morally unacceptable to steal the bread. Now, I mainly appeal to consequentialism in my video, which Miggs refers to as utilitarianism. But to clarify, utilitarianism is much more narrow a definition that includes a definition of beneficial to mean that which maximizes pleasure. My view of consequentialism is a very broad one, even broader than most. So Mig claims that my views do not save morality from determinism because it divorces virtue from morality, specifically the justice system. But I'll get to the justice system later. Now, I'd argue that not only does my version of consequentialism include virtue, but that it is in fact an important part of it, if one were to take a far enough step back and look at the big picture. I say this because virtue has consequence. The virtue of an action speaks towards the virtue of the individual, and the virtue of the individual speaks towards the likelihood of them continuing to behave in the manner in which they demonstrate. So if a man steals bread to save his family and does not believe he is doing much harm to the baker, this implies that he's the type of person who would steal to save his family, and it doesn't necessarily imply that he's going to steal for selfish reasons. So this virtue carries with it the consequences that the individual will protect his family, and therefore his actions are more likely to be beneficial. This is why if an accident occurs with a very negative result, punishment is not necessary, for no corrective measure of punishment needs to be implemented to correct something that's an accident. Again, Meg, I think you missed the point in that the point of punishment is not to punish, but to correct, or maybe more accurately, to rehabilitate negative behavior, not simply because they behaved negatively, but that it is more likely that they are going to behave negatively in the future. This only divorces blame and vengeance, or retribution, from morality, which are not necessary for morality, Meg, and I would argue, in fact, are detrimental to it. That was my original point in my video. Not that the justice system exists to deter crime, but that the only positive side of the justice system currently is to deter crime. Save for a few points in the law, like the Good Samaritan law. The justice system is very deontological by nature. Claiming ignorance, for example, is not a defense. And if you steal from a very rich man that has more wealth than he knows what to do with in order to save the mother of your 5 children on whom they are all dependent, if you steal from this man a single tablet of medicine that he has billions of, then you are liable to be punished under our justice system. This system of justice currently used is morally bankrupt, as is the idea that morality demands retribution or some form of payment for its transgressions. For again, no benefit actually comes from the paying of this penalty other than to deter it, and it can be deterred far more successfully under rehabilitative consequentialism. So this view that you apparently espouse, while laced with virtue ethics, is one that perpetrates itself, for it is nothing more than vengeance, which only begets more pain and suffering. The best example is, in fact, in our justice system, for people can be imprisoned for nonviolent, and some would even argue victimless crimes. They can pay their penalties and be released, but released into a society that does not wish to hire a felon for any meaningful position, and therefore is only left with the option to commit actual crimes that do have victims. This is where the libertarian view fails miserably, for it only makes sense, and some would even say that it presupposes divine command theory, which, by the way, Tooltime was the one that mentioned that, and not myself. And I feel you kind of strawmanned his argument in the text comments a bit. It is, in fact, divine command theory, not consequentialism, that eviscerates morality, because it reduces good to mean the possibly arbitrary pet peeves of an entity that is unaffected by our actions and does not speak towards any noticeable good in this plane of existence.